Back with another episode of episode 15 of the 5 to 9 podcast. As always, I am Vince Marbelli, and with me, as always, is Mike Martino. Mike, how are you tonight, buddy?
I'm fantastic. We have best behavior. We have a special guest today.
Okay.
This is gonna be a treat tonight. It's not just gonna be Vince and I yammering. We have someone I look to in the customer experience world, Tema Frank, who is she's a best-selling author, an international speaker, a teacher, and a business consultant. So way overqualified for our podcast. And she also does her own podcast. So welcome to the program, Tema. Thanks for joining.
Here. We all start somewhere.
Yes, welcome.
So, Tema is the author of a best-selling book called People Shock, and she wrote this while she was working. So, Tema, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and your book, and the response your book has received, and how you use it for your business?
Okay, well, I have worked in areas related to customer experience for 3 decades. It's been a while. Although, my career has meandered all over the place. And the book, it's actually my second book, but the first one was 20 years ago. And that one, I had been out of the country, and when I came back, I was pregnant and figured no one would hire me, so I might as well write a book. This one, I really, for the last several years, have focused. First, it was very much on usability. I started a company in 2001 called Web Mystery Shoppers, and we were really, from what I can tell, the first company anywhere in the world that was testing both websites and customer experience that was not on the web, so what we would now call omni-channel customer experience. And then I got really interested in this podcasting thing. And so I started podcasting about 4 years ago, and decided a couple of years ago that I was going to really focus the podcast on the subject that I wanted to write a book about. So that's part of the secret to making it all tie together is, I had originally been podcasting. I'm based in Canada, and I'd originally been podcasting about Canadian companies that were trying to sell online and what they were doing. And the problem is Canada's a very small market. And if you want to earn a living, it can be difficult if you restrict yourself.
Yes.
So as I was researching the book, I thought, okay, who are the people that I want to meet and talk to? And I would line them up for the podcast. And that was part of the trick. So then when it came time to write the book, a lot of the content for the book had already been developed and written as blog posts. It really just needed some tweaking to actually make it come out as a book.
So there was actually very little, and I don't want to minimize it, but like it was a work in progress. You wrote the book over like a 2-year period, let's say, and it sort of wrote itself.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I basically researched it for about 4 years, and then I did finally just get fed up with the fact that it wasn't getting written, and I at the same time, coincidentally, broke my foot, and so I figured this is a sign that I should just sit down and write. And so then I really, and this may not be what your listeners want to hear, but I really worked on it pretty much full time for a few months to actually get it written. So, taking a sabbatical is sometimes one way to do it, but if you're more disciplined than I am, you can certainly write for a few hours a week and just chip away at it.
So you have a great story on your website, and I hope I can read it because it is on your website. So I am going to read it.
Sure.
And we've had this conversation about when your plan A goes to hell, it's great to have a plan B. Mm-hmm. So I hope this jogs some memory on your website. And it goes, many years ago, I was hired as a marketing manager in a mid-sized bank. There were 3 of us in the department, an eager kid, that was you, a beautiful girl who refused to do any work and spent most of her time in a bar, And when she wasn't there, she was painting her nails. And you opened up 3 regional banks. And after doing all that, you got laid off. So that stung. So you went out and decided to go out on your own. So when you did go out on your own, did you already have that in mind, or that was a product of being thrust into that situation?
Well, I'd always been interested in entrepreneurship, and I don't know if or when I would have taken the plunge if that hadn't happened. I think that certainly made it happen sooner than it would have, because it is hard if you've got a good job to walk away from a good income. On the other hand, that job in a lot of ways it was killing me. I was so frustrated. I was working in an environment where my boss actually came and said to me, you're not doing your career any good by staying in the office doing your job. You should be at the bar with the vice president. And,
awesome.
Yeah. It was quite the boys club. And that's just not what I wanted to be doing, really. And so I said, fine, if they're going to fire me for doing my job, so be it. And when the time came for layoffs, those of us who stayed in the office and were doing our work were the first ones to be let go. Eventually, head office figured out, and the boss in the bar got fired. But so there was that. And then in terms of timing, it actually worked out pretty well, because I was about to get married to a professor, and he had a research leave coming. So I thought, career, Europe won.
Fantastic.
So we took off and went to Europe, but I started freelance writing just before we left, and my self-employment career really grew from there. And that was back in 1991, and I've been self-employed ever since.
Awesome.
I've had that same debate, Europe versus work. Right now, work is up 4-0, but Europe might be due for a comeback at some point, because having been over there, it is a completely different world, and it's a little more my speed. But I think you made the right choice.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So Tema, in regards to the book, and it has great reviews, are you leveraging the book in any way for your business, or is that kind of one stream of work, and then what you do as I'll say is your day job as another stream of work, or are there a symbiotic relationship with those?
I am totally trying to leverage it for my work.
Okay.
And that was part of my rationale in writing it. I do, and then starting to do more paid speaking, which is something that I really enjoy doing. And hoping that the book is going to lead to more sort of higher level consulting work. So that's basically what I'm after with it. That is my life, and what the book is talking about is what I want to talk about in my life.
Yeah, I'm finding a lot of parallels here. I went to the paid speaking without a book, and all of a sudden you meet all these other speakers that is like, oh yeah, we should exchange books.
Yeah.
And I have to, yeah, we should do that. Because,
totally do that.
I was in Atlanta early last year, and I overheard someone say, "Oh, I got to meet the process guy. We should exchange books." And I just sort of turned away in shame and said, "Well, I guess I got to write a book now." Like I fell ass backwards into doing that, and so I've sort of taken this different path to the in a different field, but in a doing the same thing. But now I'm circling back to say I need to write a book so that I can legitimize that speaking thing.
Well, and it is funny that way, because just the fact of having a book, I mean, hopefully a decent book, and it helps that my book, the reviews have been excellent. So that's really great.
Right.
But I found literally it had been published, and maybe within a week or 2 weeks, I got a phone call from South Africa from a conference organizer saying, "Will you come speak at our event?"
Wow.
It was just, and I figured, now they're not paying for the speech, but they're flying me over there and giving me 3 nights in a nice hotel. So when else am I going to have the chance to go visit South Africa, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So a book just does give you a certain degree of credibility.
Hmm.
But you do, I mean, what troubles me is I've seen a lot of speakers and business people who've written really crappy books, and don't do that. You know, if you're going to write something, make it good.
And that's why I've held out, because when I finally do, it's going to be a masterpiece of epic proportions. And so, you know, get ready, but get ready, world. But yeah, no, it's not because I just have like 8 million other things going on. But
yeah.
But it is a good lesson for our.
But it's a great lesson.
Our community, that if speaking and doing the speaking circuit is something that is your 5 to 9, it's something you should really think about.
Yeah.
As, that seems to be part of the package you need to bring to that type of business.
Yeah. And it seems like then the book became there was an instant return on your invested time, because people were now able to find you, and I'm sure created a bunch of different business opportunities for you moving forward, because you had authored this fantastic piece of literature.
Yeah, it gives you credibility for sure.
Yeah. Awesome.
So why don't we get into the heart of the customer experience and the book itself, and what can also help the 5 to 9 audience.
Okay.
So we talked about this when I was on your podcast, and it was kind of from a different angle, as it was from the government customer experience. But what is the ROI of investing in customer experience improvement? Because there is heavy dollars that need to be invested, and what does a company get out of it?
They get greater profits. Fundamentally, there are more and more studies that are showing that. One of the ones that I like to quote was a study where they looked at an investment of $100. If it had been invested in the stock market, sort of the overall S&P 500, in 2000, by I think it was 2012, it would have been worth $93, that $100 investment. But if instead at that same time, so much for that, if instead at that same time that $100 had been invested in a portfolio made up of companies that do well in the American Customer Satisfaction Index, it would have been up to $490. That's a pretty huge difference.
Wow.
There's absolutely no question that there is a huge return on the investment in customer experience. The problem is, and knowing that, I kept wondering, why aren't more companies doing this? And it's a question that I ask almost everybody I interview on Frank Reactions. But the problem is that the results accrue in the slightly longer term. They're not short term. And so many businesses are thinking short term. Mm-hmm. So whether it's, little startups are thinking short term unless they've got funding to help them think longer term, because often you have to think short term when you're getting going, because you've got to get stuff out and get revenue in. And big companies, publicly traded companies, all they care about is the quarterly profit statements and the results. What are the shareholders going to think? And until such time as we get through to shareholders that this is the way to compete and that it makes sense long run, then they'll start being a little more patient in accepting it. But right now, they're reluctant. And there's been research done, I quote some of it in the book, that shows that companies, senior people, will do things they know will hurt the long-term success of the company in order to boost the quarterly results. It's just a work system.
Yeah, and I've actually heard that same piece of information about the quarterly results skewing. I heard it from the process perspective, because things take 6 months to a year to actually address a process issue, and so I'm not willing to invest resources today to fix something that might not benefit me for a year, because for that same reason, because it's not going to show well on my financial statements at the end of the quarter, and my share price is going to be impacted, and my shareholders are going to be upset, and I might lose my job as chairman. Like, and what a ridiculous short-sighted view.
Absolutely.
So I'm with you, and I think, you know, Mike, we talk a lot about the marriage between customer experience and the process improvement piece, and this is another example of where those two worlds really, which seem sort of separate, are very congruous.
Well, you're kind of leading.
I'm getting excited.
Well, you're kind of leading me into what in the book I call the 3 P's of profit.
Okay.
Are promise, people, and process. So process is one of those pillars that you have to rest on. So there you go.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's one that's too often neglected, right? I mean, you can get your staff all hepped up and really, but if you're not going to change the processes that are causing the problems, you're still going to have the problems. And, you know, a nice, polite staff member, I give this example actually fairly often when I talk back at that same bank that Mike was quoting from originally. And we were trying to promote ourselves. Our slogan was always ahead in personal service. So we were all about the service. But head office just didn't quite understand. And so they kept making mistakes. We had fantastic staff in our branches. But there's only so many times that Sally can say to Mr. Jones, I'm really sorry, and I'll do what I can to fix this for you. You can only say that so many times before the customer says, you know, I love you, Sally, but I'm going to another bank.
Right.
Because I'm fed up with this. So you need to look at all those elements. You need the promise, which is, what are you trying to accomplish and why? What about it is going to motivate anybody? You as the person founding the company, your employees, your customers. What in there is inspirational about it? What drives it? Then the people, which includes your internal people as well as external people. Because if your staff aren't happy, they're not going to give good customer service. It just won't happen. You know, you can train your staff to say, have a nice day, but it's just coming out because they have to say it. The audience knows, you know, the listener knows. So, and then you need the process elements, and you need to look at your processes from the viewpoint of a customer and then work your way back through. So instead of fixing, otherwise you may end up fixing things that aren't the top priorities. Because we've all got process issues, right? And so how do you set priorities? And I argue that the way you need to set those is saying, okay, from a customer perspective or a prospect perspective, what are the biggest barriers? What are the biggest problems and irritants? Now that we know that, let's look at what in our processes is making that happen. And a lot of getting that process change right is also talking to the people on your front lines.
Right.
You know, it drives me nuts that in so many companies, their call center staff are the worst paid staff. They're your representative. They're the ones who are showing your face to the world. And you don't care what they think. You don't care to pay them well. You don't get their opinions on what are customers telling you. It's just boggles my mind that people are not tapping into that incredible resource.
I am like blown away here. because one of the things that I try to do whenever I lead a project, Mike, you know this well, is I don't want the director or the manager or the supervisor or the whatever on my project team. I want frontline people.
Yes.
I want frontline people to tell me what's really happening, and not just what's on a documented process or what's supposed to happen or what would happen in an ideal world. I want to know what is happening.
Yep.
Exactly. CX. Okay, I'm gonna state it categorically. Customer experience, Lean Six Sigma, process improvement, together at last.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is when they call those meetings, it always starts with like director or manager. It never starts with who are the people on the front line. Let's get them in a meeting.
Right.
Okay, let's get the director of that area, and they'll tell us everything we need to know.
Right.
What was the last time they were on a phone?
Right.
When's the last time they had to solve a problem in real time? Not when they get the escalation, they have like 3 hours to think about the perfect solution. So,
Yeah.
So how do we turn from the short, like how do we always talk about the long game, Vince and I. How do we get people to think about the long game instead of the short game when it comes to customer experience?
Well, I think partially it is showing statistics like the one that I quoted you earlier.
Yeah, that's a good one.
$93 versus $490.
Mm-hmm.
I think, though, at an individual company level, what I've seen that works best, and this is a mistake that I think I made when I first started Web Mystery Shoppers, and I had no sales training, no sales background. I am not a natural salesperson. And I would go into these companies and I think, okay, the logic of this is so clear. So I'll present the logic about why they should be doing this and why they should care about what their customers think, and they'll hire me to do. I was wrong, right? I was naive. Now, what I would do and what I do is I will go in with the voice of the customer. So I will go in with actual videotape or audio tape, or even if it's transcriptions, saying, this is what your customers are experiencing. Now, let's talk about the facts of and the data about how this could profit for your company to fix it. So if you start with the emotion and then back it up with the facts, I think that has a much greater chance of being accepted. And it amazes me how, interestingly, as you go higher and higher in an organization, I think the impact of that voice of the customer in some ways gets greater. Because, you know, if you get to a CEO and you bring the voice of the customer, they're shocked and appalled and they want to get it solved. So that's the ideal, is if you can get to that CEO level.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's a great approach. Yeah, I like that.
When you bring that voice of the customer, what are the early warning signs that you have a customer experience problem? Because I'm pretty sure you find it in those videos or transcripts.
For sure. And even before the videos or transcripts, there are things that may be going on in your organization that can be a hint. I mean, obviously, if your sales are dropping, you know there's something going on, right?
Right.
But there can be other early warning signs, such as if you're having an increase in the returns rate of your products. That suggests to you something isn't working. Either your products are not being manufactured properly, or you're not promising what you're delivering. So there's something going wrong there. If you're finding that you're having trouble recruiting and retaining good staff, that's often also an indication that there's a problem that will lead to a customer experience problem. My favorite one that I give is, if in the executive suite, there's either no arguing with the CEO or everybody's arguing. If you're at either extreme, you've got a problem, right? Because if nobody's arguing, then that means they're afraid to speak. They're not telling the truth. If everybody's arguing, it's dysfunctional. So you want to try and figure out, so that can also be a real indicator that there either is a problem or there's a problem brewing. And then there are other things, like in terms of social media. If nobody's looking at your social media accounts, chances are you're going to run into problems. You know, that's not, I mean, if it's a really small company, maybe not, but even small companies, people will go on social media. Certainly, if you're in industries where there are ratings and reviews, you can get hurt if you're not paying attention to that stuff.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Lots to think about here.
That's what I try to do.
Yeah.
So once we have voice the customer, thinking the long term, what can probably mostly for large businesses, but also for the 5 to 9ers out there, what can they do to improve their customer experience?
What I would say is, most importantly, listen. Go out there and talk to your existing customers if you have them. If you're just starting and don't have them yet, talk to people who are potential customers or like the people you want to have as customers. Ask lots and lots and lots of questions and really listen. Don't be defensive. If you're talking to your customers and they start criticizing something you've done, our gut instinct is to defend. You have to swallow that instinct and just draw out more. Why are they feeling that way? Even if you think they're wrong, that is their perspective. I mean, one of the things that I've done in testing web-related customer experience is I don't look at the objectively, how long is somebody on hold on a phone call? I look at, in their opinion, how reasonable was the length of time they had to wait. And what I found is for big bureaucracies, people expect they're going to have to wait longer. And so they'll accept a slightly longer wait than they would if they're calling a little company. So you have to really be open and actively seeking input from the people who you want to have buying from you. And just listen to what they're telling you.
So it's not just a matter of minimizing, let's say, average handle time, but rather figuring out what the appropriate, how long people are willing to take, how long your customers are willing to wait before being served. That's interesting.
Well, that's one of the biggest problems companies run into is they try to minimize average handle time.
Right.
And so that encourages their staff to just rush people off the phone, and they figure, okay, get them off. Even if they have to call back, it's on someone else, not on me.
Right.
Totally
I came across I was out in Vancouver last year, and I was doing a workshop out there, and we were talking about average handle time, and one of the participants told me that her company had a 7-minute maximum handle time. And so I was like, well, how do you make sure that you're off in 7 minutes? And she said, if our agents get to 6:59, they hang up.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so as a process guy, you can imagine I'm having a bit of a conniption. And so I'm like, so then what happens?
Right.
Well, they call back.
Yeah. And start the process over again.
And they start the process all over again. And it's like, but it's a brand new call. But that was their metric. And like, that makes absolutely no sense, but good luck to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? You've got to think carefully about what are you measuring? What are you rewarding?
Right.
So, often part of the reason that we have silos in companies is because the reward structure is, well, if I build a bigger team in my department, I get a bigger budget and I get a higher salary.
Right.
You have to rethink what are the incentives that we're offering, and are they really giving incentive to do the right thing? Because often there are unintended consequences. You really have to think that through. But that's a great example.
That's awesome.
I've been using that one for the last year and a half. It's fantastic. But no. It's yours,
so
please.
Now I know, because sometimes you think, oh damn, I got cut off.
They're hanging up on you. They are hanging up on you. So
So Vince and I were at a workshop where we were talking about customer centricity. And that's and the argument was it should not be fully customer centric because there needs to be pain in the system. Yes. So there needs to be Vince, jump in and help me. There needs to be some customer pain in the journey. There needs to be some customer pain in the journey, in the pleasure pain gap.
You need to maximize the pleasure pain gap.
Yes. Okay, go ahead. No,
so by having pain in the process, and pain might be high prices, might be, I have to wait in line to get my coffee. The pleasure of the thing at the end, the outcome is greater. And I really struggled with this again because we come from you need to maximize everything and make everything amazing. But if everything's amazing, then it's easy to take for granted and nothing is amazing.
I would argue, I can see where in some cases, like Apple having big lineups to get the first iPhones, right?
Right.
If you've got an incredibly strong brand, or it's like restaurants that are popular and won't take reservations. In certain circumstances, that will work. But generally, for most businesses, you want to maximize the gap between the pain they were experiencing when they came to you and the pleasure of dealing with you. That's where the gap should be. The gap shouldn't be dealing with you is a pain in the butt, but I'll put up with it.
Right.
Well, I think the example that was given was IKEA. So you walk in to, and the showroom part when you're upstairs, it's awesome because everything's put together. They show you how to put different pieces together. You go into the marketplace and it all goes to hell because first of all, you got to walk through like 45 minutes of the marketplace. Then you get to the place, you get to the self-service where you got to try and put like a sofa on the thing while the cart's moving. And then you finally get to the checkout area. This is all the whole pain part where it takes forever. But then they have the cheap ice cream right outside the where you paid. And that brings you back up to, oh, at least I got cheap ice cream. And I was like, well, if they just made all that better, I'd probably go to IKEA more. But they seem to be good with that.
There were a competitor that came up that offered IKEA quality and prices, but a better experience. Guess where people are going to go? They wouldn't stick with IKEA.
Right.
I agreed. So Vincent and I had and the workshop people's had a disagreement there, but.
Yeah.
But you know what? The one thing it did do is it got us thinking about, figuring out what's important to your brand and making that making that the focus. Yeah. And so, I think there was, whether you agree with the whole thing or not, that was valuable. It's figuring out, and I've been trying to do this with my own brand is, what do people actually care about and how do I make that amazing?
Right.
And not worry so much about the other stuff. But
yeah.
So kind of the last thing I want to touch on is digital, because most of the people in the 5 to 9 community have an online business, because as you work during the day, the thing that's most practical is to be online.
Yeah.
So in your mind, what are the 3 essential ingredients for profitability in this digital era and being online?
I would say essential ingredient number 1 is having a niche and understanding it. So really getting to know your target audience. And, one of my pet peeves, we all talk about personas and how you flesh out this character who's like your target audience. But so often companies do that without basing it on actual customer research.
Yes.
They base it on their assumptions or their desires. So you can use your desired target customer as a working hypothesis, but then you've got to get out there and talk to people and find out if you're right or wrong. So I would say that is the most important thing, is just really, really understand who they are, what motivates them. The second big challenge, I think, really now is just cutting through noise, because there is so much noise out there. Everybody is trying to market them with incredible content and stuff. So what can you do that is going to be in some way different and relevantly different? So, I come back to, I hate quoting Seth Godin because everybody does. But
we're okay with that.
We're okay with that. That's good.
His notion of a purple cow is not crazy. That you need something that makes what you're offering so different, or in perception so different, that people will want it. So, and then of course the third element is just, the great thing about online is that you can experiment. You can run experiments and tests. So keep, have metrics, keep track of what you're doing and experiment, see what's working and what isn't. And you have to keep changing. And the challenge with the digital world is everything changes so fast. You can't just latch on to, here's how to game search engines these days. As lots of people have discovered, that'll last maybe for a few weeks at most, and then you get killed.
Right.
So look for delivering what people really want. If you deliver what people are actually looking for, the search engines will reward you. You don't have to play crazy games.
Agreed. Very good.
Cool.
Vince, you have anything else you want to touch on?
No, I'm probably more worked up and excited than I should be. But no.
People Shop available at Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah. So before we let you go and we talk about People Shock again, I have two questions as we get out of the kind of customer experience realm and just you as a business person and you as a person. So the first question is, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Mm.
I would tell my 20-year-old self to take more risks.
No.
I think I was too risk averse, whether it's both in my personal life and my professional life. You know, I had business ideas, but I was afraid to start them. The reality is, if you start them when you're young, what do you have to lose? You're not trying to pay for a family yet.
Yeah.
Go out there, give it a go. And the great thing too, when you start when you're young, is people will talk to you. You just go and say, well, I've got this idea. And you can be naive and innocent, and it doesn't look dumb, right?
Right.
Very good. And of course, in my personal life too, I think, you know, looking back, I'd have had more fun. I'd have partied more. Don't let my kids know that I'm saying that.
Awesome. That's good. Those are two. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So my second question is, if I gave you a billboard, if I paid for it, what message would you write on it for people?
Be nice.
Simple. I like that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One I kind of like to put in front of the White House right now.
I have a political science background, and we could go for another hour and a half if you want to, but we might lose some listeners. We might alienate some listeners.
Yes.
Some very strong opinions on what's going on.
But
Anyways.
Fundamentally, if people just adopted the concept of being nice, we'd have a much better place.
Yeah. Very good. That's a good one. So give us book details, where people can find you, your website, all the social media outposts.
Sure. Okay, so the book, the full name is People Shock, The Path to Profits When Customers Rule. And it is available at Amazon and other online booksellers, and a few if you go to your local bookstore, you can order it through them as well. But I haven't really pushed too hard to get it into bookstores physically. You can find me and more about what I do and the writing at frankreactions.com. And you can also there find the podcast, which is also called Frank Reactions, or Frank Reactions on Customer Experience, which you can also get on iTunes or other podcast listening tools like Stitcher. And if you would like to talk to me, I would love to hear from people. My email is temarketinga@frankreactions.com. And my Twitter handle is also just Tema.
Also, I've started following you on Instagram, and I love your Instagram feed, which is also at Tema Frank.
Right. Yeah.
So please follow her there. There's some really good wallpapers and quotes there. So I love it.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being on our show.
Yes.
This is a real honor to have someone of your stature on our little podcast. So we totally appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great.
Great. Well, good luck with the podcast. And
Thank you.
good work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Okay.
Appreciate
bye-bye.
it. Bye. See you later, everybody.